Hello, good morning. Greetings from Hong Kong. Thank you for joining me by watching this video presentation. As you can see, the title is on the slide. I make one tiny change by bracketing inter. I think what I'm going to touch upon mostly mostly will cover cultural practice, but perhaps not intercultural practices. For me, intercultural practices, intercultural communication is not actually guaranteed, but something that we may hope for. So I'll explain that later as I go through these slides. Just want to say at the very beginning, when I submitted the abstract, I intended this presentation to be more like a reflective practice, because previously the topic of intercultural communication has never really settled in my mind when I teach EAP, probably because in my previous institution, intercultural communication is a must, is a given. It's one of those survival skills you need to have in order to again work and then survive in a very, very culturally rich environment, and that institution is NUS, National University of Singapore. So cultural communication has never come to the top of my list, but when I see the list of topics proposed by PIM, it actually prompts me to think further. What is that? As the bullet says, the not yet explicit connection between the cultural communication and EAP. So in the next few slides, I'm basically, as originally a reflective practice, I'm going to raise a series of questions, and then again enter that reflection. Hopefully I can provide some answers to the question I raised at the beginning. So let me begin by first of all looking at an analogy. When I start to think about the connection between the cultural communication and EAP, so this is what I have in mind. For me, EAP is the traditional type of lean dough. And then if we want to bring in intercultural communication into EAP classrooms, then that would change the constitution of EAP programs and make EAP the enriched dough. So this is the analogy that I have in mind. But I'm going to look at this enriched dough, the enriched EAP program, with or having integrated intercommunication from a very narrow and utilitarian perspective, from curriculum design perspective. I will give you a bit of background information. So that's why again, my perspective is rather practical and narrowed, because I want, for me, the connection between the cultural communication and EAP is a natural one. From the plural literacy framework proposed by European, I think, Center for Modern Language. This natural cultural embeddedness in language teaching and learning. And then I think especially appropriate for EAP is that we are teaching students how to adopt this particular academic style and communication, so that they can learn and then thrive in this very unique community. And then learn how to also behave, reason like an academic. So for me, that connection has always been, again, implicit and quite natural. But also when I set out to reflect on the connection between EAP and cultural communication, what I also have in mind is, can we actually take intercultural communication as competency, because again, for Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, we have adopted the competency-based or outcomes-based approach to curriculum design and also to teaching and learning. So let me begin with that background introduction. So it all starts with the first set of questions is why and then how we are going to do this. I think if I remember correctly, it all started a little before the COVID era. I think end of 2019 or even earlier, the university has decided to switch to a competency-based program. So, starting from the very top institutional level, university has set out to conduct a major overhaul of the curriculum. So the reform began there and then trickled down to program level. So the Center for Language Education, we also start to look at our programs and try to revamp part of the language curriculum. And then, of course, eventually we need to look at the courses that we've been teaching for the past decades, maybe at least a few years, and then see if while the whole entire train of curriculum reform program revamp has embark its journey, how we can address this particular cultural or intercultural awareness in our language curriculum. And then, of course, if we are going to teach cultural awareness, intercultural communication, how are we going to assess it? So these are the basic questions I have in mind, having understood for myself. This is the entire context for embarking on this journey to look at new courses and the possibility of addressing cultural, intercultural communication in our program. So let me show you what the university's, the institutional vision of intercultural communication or competency look like. So it's subsumed under the international outlook. So on the screen, you can see I sort of put it in a red circle. So suppose we want our students, the UST students, to have that international outlook. The premise is that they probably would develop the appreciation for cultural diversity. And then how would that be translated or be implemented at program level? For the Center for Language Education. So as you can see, for the center, based on this new competence-based framework, we try to address or cover 4 broad competencies: communication at the back picture, personal development, problem solving, and then social responsibility. Under social responsibility, SR3, the third item or sub competency area, is cultural awareness. So it's being officially written into the program. And then at course level is the actual person who implement that competency in the classroom. This is the questions that I have in mind when I start to think about how or whether we have enacted upon covered cultural communication, intercultural communication in the classroom. So the question is, this is still a EAP course focusing on academic literacies. So how much of cultural elements we need to include in the course materials, and how much time we need to devote to actually teach students to do develop that cultural sensitivity. Eventually, do we need to? Again, it's an if question. If we have taught them, do we need to assess them? To what extent do we need to assess? How do we assess the ability to communicate interculturally? So here, while writing up this presentation, I actually look back or look down at primary education level, and because in Australia, they also want to develop young learners at a very early age, that cultural competency, this is their exact word, or cultural awareness, by using two benchmarks, being willing and being able. So that prompts me to think for also international university, even though we do have perhaps a majority of Hong Kong local students. Are students willing to communicate with people from diverse cultural background? If they are willing, are they able to? How are we going to equip the students to conduct, carry out such communication? And of course, Hong Kong is a multicultural society, but do we want to raise students' awareness further? Not only that they know they live in a multicultural society, but they need to engage these various cultures, also using their academic skills, how to do so. So where I'm at, okay, so let me take you to look at, so this is what we've decided, how to implement, how to cover intercultural communication or cultural communication at course level. So just an example here. So on the screen, you can see these are currently a working document. So that's why you have different font color. The red ones are being proposed, also examined, and then worked on during the summer. The fonts in black are pretty much already settled. So we've got two areas under communication and social responsibility, possibly able to address cultural awareness or cultural competency. The first one under language related communication. For us, obviously, it's those who you communicate with, it's audience awareness. So in a way, we translate cultural awareness into audience awareness. The other aspect, if you look at under cultural awareness, is actually to interact with individuals. So we demand not just, not only knowing what is intercultural communication, the actual we would like to encourage students to actually demonstrate it, to actually engage, interact with people of different who understands differently, who perceive things differently from us. So the two things then we decided, or what I have observed at course level, I've taught different courses. So perhaps two, here is some of the jargons. PILOS means program intended learning outcome. SILO or SILOs, course intended learning outcome, to ILOs, lesson intended learning outcomes. So gradually at very, very specific levels, is that at least what I can see at course levels, we actively and also encourage or demand students to practice, first of all, audience awareness, and secondly, engaging, interacting with multiple perspectives. And here there's a quote. I will return to that literature in about 3 slides. This is a direct quote from that journal article. So the definition for us at course level, interculture basically represents or means space for interaction. Does not really necessarily mean those physical cultural differences in terms of different languages, different appearance, different behaviors. But what we really like, the essential component is interaction, and then pay attention to differences. So let me simply show you what, how we unpack these two intended learning outcome course at course level, audience awareness and multiple perspectives into lesson plans. Okay. So from those two major intended learning outcomes, both I think initiates an understanding of cultural differences or diversity. So definitely from with the first learning outcome in terms of audio awareness. We want students at the very beginning understand there is both academic and non-academic audience. Of course, these two major audience types come from different languages and cultures. That goes without saying. And then on top of that, other compounding factors is each of those languages and cultural backgrounds probably have their own voices, presenting their stances, and then in terms of communication, want to address different purposes. And then from there, when we look at our lesson design, so we want to cover all those basics, addressing audience differences. So we do need to look into the register style tone. That's what I think students already learn in IB. And then at university level, we want to delve into genre flexibility or rhetorics. And then referring to the previous definition of interculture defined as a common space for interaction, I think the courses I've taught encourage students to respond to both texts and audience. So it's more than understanding what a text says and means, but actually engages, interacts with those texts. And as for learning activities, we will sit students down to do panel discussion, or if they're on their own, to do a piece of synthesizing different perspectives, trying to construct a dialogue, see if there's a possibility to do that, or write up their own, present their own arguments orally or in written forms. Right, I'm looking at the time here. I have 3 more minutes. So very quickly want to give some examples of the curriculum or course design currently going on in CLE, Center for Language Education. The slides shows those courses that I have taught and have personal experience with. Not showing on the slides, but this is what CLE curriculum covers. We also have courses for Humanities, School of Humanities, and then Faculty of Engineering. And also this summer, I'm currently working on writing part of the courses for the Common Core English at level 1. Also supporting lesson writing for level 2 business courses, which just have our curriculum approved by the Faculty of Business. And then, of course, I'm also revising level 3 a science course. Okay, so just taking us very quickly through some of these course design that addresses those 2 essential learning outcomes, audience awareness and multiple perspectives. So starting at level 1, this is what every year 1 student, each year 1 students need to take. In the new courses, of course, will address those 2 learning outcomes even more. But even in the old course material, one of those activities engages students with multiple perspectives is to look at an abstract topic called happiness, but probing and examining it using different indices. So the indices we propose students can adopt to explore the issue of happiness further. Also cultural differences, cultural perception, national perception of happiness, using those 3 indices, GDP, Gini, and then GNH growth, national happiness. And then use that for discussion, training of discussion skills. So though in those discussion practices, students actually very actively, proactively challenges their own perceptions, engage with others' views, usually by having a debate. And that's for level 1, year 1 EAP courses. At level 2, I just want to highlight a few things, still addressing audience awareness, but at level 2, in order to focus more on collaboration, we assign students with specific audience types. But at year 3, still want to expand the audience range. We want students to identify their own audiences. With their chosen topics, they need to think about the levels of pitching, whether the content is appropriate, which audience they would like to focus, target particularly, because they have a very specific purpose in mind. At level 3, we want students, encourage students to persuade their audience. And then, of course, in that case, if it's a more diversified group of audience, students need to invest more time to research their content. And of course, deliver those content, pitch those content to the target audience, and hopefully to achieve deliver those their purposes. Main difference between science and business is the same type of activities, research-based activity for business school. They will still use team-based learning to finish that communication project. So these are the examples of tasks. Sorry, I know the time has run out, so I won't go into details. 2 more slides to go. Right, so at the beginning, when we set out, for me, when I started teaching, for instance, these EAP communication center courses, I really didn't think too much about the theoretical foundations behind course writing or lesson planning. It is again until this particular PIM event, I have time to think about, backtrack, what sort of theories would be appropriate to fit into or to justify the current course design. And then I'm using these 2 I would say developmental processes proposed again by professionals, not only scholars. The one on the left, again, scholars targeting at university learning. The one on the right, if I remember, this is referent, and then focusing on the practical use of intercultural communication to mitigate racism. So here, the theoretical foundation, again, is from pragmatic perspective. It's more than just learning about intercultural communication, but before or the essential component for intercultural communication is to understand the potential conflict or differences. Because of differences, potential conflicts, and then how to manage, deal with those conflicts by understanding the reasons, the origins of those differences, or by proactively trying to handle those conflicts and differences. So I think somehow, for me, intercultural communication under EAP, I would say, for me, I don't feel that it's something that we can achieve, but rather we use EAP as the preparation stage to engage students, to look into different perspectives, different perceptions, so they can be ready later on to deal with differences formed or based on cultural reasons. So this is how I see the connection between intercultural communication and the EAP. Right, sorry about delaying us for another 1 more minute. So back to the beginning. So now that we have that enriched dough of intercultural communication integrated EAP, again, my question is, continuing questions is, what do we want for our students? Do we just want them to know there's such a thing of intercultural communication? They have a taste of it. They have tried it out. They can do it, or we want them to use it. So you know it, you have that enriched dough. Would you like to bake it yourself? See if the bread is successful, if the taste is all good. So combining these elements together, my starting questions, my ending questions, if the intention is to encourage students to use intercommunication for a positive, productive purposes, then I think my intention, my inclination is, then why not try or to start to assess how students use intercommunication in their coursework, in their collaborative projects, or even in their reflections. Have they ever entertained such thoughts that intercultural communication could be a solution to something? Right. So I think that will be the end of my presentation. Sorry about the overtime. I think I'm overtime for 5 minutes. This is my list of references. Thanks very much for watching, listening. Have a great day at TIM. Bye.